You're listening to an Influicity podcast. And I'm going to get this statistic wrong, but I read several articles about people who win the lottery have one of the highest bankruptcy rates in the country, which is insane. It's like the people who win millions of dollars become the poorest of people because they raise up their spending to match their income, but it was like a one-time thing. And a lot of people are struggling like just to meet the day to day. So what might be a good tip for somebody who's, struggling to make ends meet, can't manage to get any savings together? What kind of advice would you have for someone like that?
Yeah, and we do think, Scott, that getting more money is going to make us happier. And I did a lot of research on lottery winners. And you're right that the baseline of happiness, wherever your baseline is before you win the lottery, skyrockets when you win the lottery. And after just 6 months, it drops right back down to wherever it was. And actually, people are worse off financially because it's like that office tower I was talking about. You inherit an office tower, but you have the foundation of a little tiny house. So it all topples over. Because if you earn $1 million or $10 million over 10 or 20 years, you have that foundation to hold on to it. If you just get it, it topples over. Same if it's an inheritance or any of those things. And actually, it's so interesting that you mentioned it because there was a researcher that actually wanted to quantify the effect of lottery winners. And although it's very unlikely you're going to win a lottery or your neighbor is, but be wary if your neighbor does. Because for every $1,000 your neighbor actually wins in the lottery, your chance of going bankrupt increases by 2.4% for every $1,000. Why is that? It's phenomenal. And what I think it is I think that in our brain, we have what's called a mirror neuron. Dr. Rizzolotti, an Italian researcher, he discovered this. He had monkeys hooked up to probes. And a researcher came and who was licking an ice cream cone. And all of a sudden, the monkey's brain lit up with pleasure as if he was licking the ice cream cone. And so I think what happens is when we see our friends with toys that we secretly want, when we see our friends going on vacations that we secretly want, or we love golf and somebody hits that perfect shot, part of our mirror neuron lights up and we want it too. So we have to realize that when we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, it's not entirely your fault. It's your brain. That's why people watch these stupid unboxing videos. Who would watch a video? Why would you watch a video of someone else unboxing something you don't get? Because part of our brain loves this stuff. So to get back circuitously to your question about how do people, that are just struggling, first of all, shatter the myth that understand that your brain's working against you. It wants instant gratification and it wants what it sees. So you have to look at both sides of your income and your expenses, not just your expenses. It's not just all about cutting. And like I said, don't just look for the latte. Don't just look for the little things. Look for the big wastages. Are you carrying high interest rate consumer debt? You've got to get rid of that. It's going to kill you. You got to go and see a nonprofit credit counselor or certified financial planner. You have to get help. Because if you keep down that cycle, it is just you're never going to get out of it. And then also on the income side, if you never ask the question, how can I bring in more income? If you never call up your friends and go, what do you think my skills are and where I could maybe make some money from that? If you never ask that question, you're not going to bring in more money into your life. So it's not just about cutting the expenses. You've got to look at the income.
That's so good. You just blew my mind with some of those stats, but I totally get it. You see things and you're like, I want that and I take pleasure in that or whatever. But I mean, there's a balance there. I think it's healthy to see what's possible because it's hard to believe in something that you haven't witnessed before, right? It's hard to believe something's possible that you haven't actually, it hasn't been proven to you in some way. So when you see someone doing extremely well, automatically you're like, I want to do well. And then the second thing that sets in is the frustration that you don't have it, perhaps, or that, there's a hurdle to get to it. But maybe embracing that a little bit more and asking the right questions, like you said, like how did you acquire those buildings or how have you bought that house? I always have been asking people, like, how did you, when I thought it was impossible to buy rental properties, I'm like, wow, if I ever just have a house, I'll be happy. And then I was just asking landlords. The guy I bought the house from had like 6 houses. I'm like, how did you get 6 houses? I don't understand. Like, who's going to give you money for 6 houses? And then he started to explain the cash flow. I was like, wow, and it's, do what successful people do. Find somebody who has the things you want, ask them how they got there, and repeat the process in some capacity. And, you'll find the path of least resistance, ideally.